There's like standing almost next to each other.
Yep. Our grandparents.
The grandparents
cool?
and so forth.
That's so cool.
So, yeah.
What's your first name?
Dan?
Dan, okay, thanks.
And I'm Shirley Erickson Swenson, and my grandfather is Stein. And Dan didn't say this, but the other connection is his mother dated Harold, and his mother dated Jay Walter.
No, really. We've heard that she was hotter than a $2 cornet.
So we finally got married.
You made it happen.
Your mother married not
Dated.
married, but dated my father.
No,
So
no.
we possibly could have been,
Yeah.
Oh, all of it. Yeah.
All of it,
Until
yeah.
this generation.
Your mother. Is it
No.
your mother? Oh, your
His
mother.
mother.
His mother,
Oh,
Lorraine Boleen, because the
my-
Boleen
Oh,
family
yeah,
is
yeah,
part
yeah.
of
You see that.
Chandler
You see
Street
the name.
also.
See the name.
And Lorraine was a good friend of your mother's because they both played piano.
And
Yeah.
actually, that's my main interest actually in this group is I knew my grandparents personally, all of them, except my mother's father, Leander Boleen. And there's been so much about him, even in this community. He built many houses around here. He helped build the train station in Jamestown.
Wow.
And when Shirley started digging and stuff and going to Nils and looking at other documents found in the Lutheran church where he was born and raised in Sweden, all of a sudden there's a certain date when he became Baptist, and there was a big B and a circle around the genealogy, and he's out.
He's out, that's right.
And so we're learning all about that.
Wow.
So they wouldn't keep his record anymore?
Well, no, they kept it from the standpoint that he had become Baptist and then moved away.
Oh.
So that's why, that's why they all immigrated here.
And so now you're the Erickson, Edith was Edith Erickson.
Right, correct.
So
Right.
that's your,
Stein,
Erickson.
my grandfather, was brother to Edith.
oh, okay, wow.
It's just that we probably got this for Nils. And I forgot we got to focus back. But Shirley, while I'm focused on you, talk about your siblings, and just so your mom and dad, who they were, and your siblings.
Okay, my father was the eldest of Stein, who married Lily Loberg. And it's interesting because I see in your book you have Austin, Pennsylvania. She too lived in Austin, Pennsylvania during the flood of 1911.
Wow.
Was your family there during the flood of 1911 also? Isn't that interesting?
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, so anyway,
1911.
when the Lobergs moved to Jamestown, they were going to Chandler Street Baptist Church, Swedish Baptist Church at that time. And so Stein was singing in the choir with my grandmother, and she asked him if he wanted a polka grisa, a little candy, and he said yes, and it all began. So they had 4 children. My father, Larry, and then Gunnard,
Emmanuel.
Einard, and
What is
then,
Einard's middle name?
oh,
They're all different.
I've got it here. Do I need to read all this? Do you want all this
it's
right
in
now?
later on,
that-
not
it's in
later on.
that thing that I
Okay.
sent you,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And then Ernest. And so they made their life here in Jamestown. My father was the eldest. He went to World War II. In fact, 3 of the boys went to World War II. My grandmother had 3 all in World War II
Yeah.
at the same time.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. When my father came back, of course, as they all did, they came back. They had survived. They were alive. They wanted to get married. They wanted to build their house. They wanted to build their family. So my father went roller skating at Midway Park and met my mother, who lied about her age and said she was 18 when she was really 17. My father...
Joyce did that?
Yes. So my father robbed the cradle, as they say. He was 7 years older. And they were married as soon as she graduated from high school.
Wow.
Established. My father built the home I'm presently living in at 127 Pennsylvania, and I just love it. I look at the wood floor that he laid and think, wow, there still are no spaces between these boards. And we're redoing a few rooms, and after 73 years, those rooms are still square.
Yeah.
You know, they were
That's something.
just amazing.
Yeah.
So I have one sister, Marilyn, who married Dan Beckstrom, who was also a Swede, but a covenant Swede. We're a covenant church. And she has 3 children. The eldest is Kristen, who is a Presbyterian minister in Pittsburgh. Then there is Daniel lives in Virginia. He is a physics professor. He actually, he was a teacher. He quit teaching in the schools and goes online and teaches medical students all over the world the physics they need to know for their schooling. And then there is Michael. Michael also lives in Pittsburgh. And they have adopted a child from China. I have 2 children. I have Erica Swenson, who is living in about an hour east of Nashville. She is a muralist and artist, and she is a free spirit. It goes with her artistic ways. And she creates her world with her paint. I'll say that. Then I have a son, John. John is married to another gal from Jamestown, Kelsey Clark, who is only part Swedish. They live in Charlotte, North Carolina. They just have had a baby in May, so I have become a grandparent of Everett John Swenson in May 20th.
They call him Evie.
So far, it's Everett.
This is something I would like to just share because it's why we're here, the importance of what family is. And it was something that when we were talking about this space and this time, I was thinking about this little story, and this is a very sweet little book. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you. It's called Have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom. And what happened was Mitch's rabbi from his home synagogue asked him, would you do my eulogy? And Mitch had admittedly fallen away from his faith. He admittedly had not been back to his home synagogue in many years, but he accepted this. And over the course of the years, he asked this rabbi very poignant questions, and I think he felt I have an expert. I want some of the answers to the things that I find compelling. So his question was why? What do people fear most about death? He asked the rabbi, and in fear, the rabbi answers. He thought for a moment. Well, for one thing, what happens next? Where do we go? Is that what we imagine? And he goes, well, and he says that's big. Mitch says, but then the rep says, yes, but there's something else. And Mitch asks, what's that? And he leaned forward and he said, being forgotten, he whispered. And then he goes on to say that there's 2 deaths that are associated. One is, as we are getting older, sometimes we feel that we're forgotten. It's the unvisited nursing home. It's the homeless who is in the frozen alleyways who mourns their passage. But then he goes on and he says, the second death, to think that you died and no one would remember you. I wonder if this is why we tried so hard to make our mark in America, to be known. Think of how important celebrity has become. We sing to get famous. We expose our worst secrets to get famous. We lose weight, we eat bugs, even commit murder to get famous. Our young people post their deepest thoughts on public websites. They run cameras from their bedrooms. It is as if they're screaming, notice me, remember me. Yet the notoriety barely lasts, names quickly blur, and in times are forgotten. How then, I asked the Reb, can you avoid this second death? And he said, in the short run, the answer is simple, family. It is through my family that I hope to live on for a few generations. When they remember me, I live on. When they pray for me, I live on. All the memories we have made, the laughs and the tears. But then he said that too is limited. And he said, how so? And then he's saying the next sentence, he goes, oh, if I've done a good job, then I will be remembered one generation, maybe two, but eventually they're going to say, what was his name again? At first, I protested, then I stopped, and then I realized I did not know my great-grandmother's name. I'd never seen my great-grandfather's face. How many generations does it take, even in a close-knit family, for the fabric to unravel? This is why the Rev says faith is so important. It is a rope for us to all grab up and down the mountain. I may not be remembered in so many years, but what I believe and have taught about God, about our traditions, that can go on. It comes from my parents and their parents before them, and if it stretches to my grandchildren and to their grandchildren, then we are all, connected. And I think that's the beauty of what we're going to be talking about today. A huge part of that is faith. And we're going to see, Dan's going to share about how the Baptist faith brought them here. But I think one of the things I remember about my mom and your dad and everybody is that faith. And I think that comes from many generations. And that's what we're going to be sharing. And hopefully we can share that with our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And that, I hope, is our legacy. I mean, we're going to share some funny stories, but I would like that to be the legacy that we share with our children. And that connects us all in just a very profound way. I would like us to open with prayer because I feel like this is a holy time. I think God is really happy when we celebrate family. I think that's so important to Him. And I know that our relatives up there are probably high-fiving too. Look what they're doing. So let's just bow our heads in prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for people making time and space to talk about our beautiful family, Lord. And we know there'll be a lot of laughters and maybe some little tears. But we know, God, your hand was on everything, from a pastor going to Sweden to bringing our grandmother here. Lord, your hand was in all of that. And let us be in awe of that and find the wonder in that. And let your presence be here as in our conversations and in the information we received. Bless everybody. Keep them safe in their travels. In thy name, amen.
I believe we are here in part because of the prayers.
Yes.
Our ancestors are gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
But their prayers live on.
Yeah.
And in part, we are here living out the prayers that they prayed for us.
Great. All right, Shirley and Dan, one for you. And then this is things that Monica and Mills have put together, and I think Cindy, you have a lot of this. You do. I think some of this you probably gave to me, and then he gave to me.
Oh, I love it.
So we are going to, this is, if you look in your packet, this is the first, it's the picture with the family. This is the picture that is kind of the classic picture.
It is the classic picture.
Yeah, and we'll go over who everybody is, kind of go before. And this actually was taken when Edith immigrated. They must have done a family picture
What do you
before.
want us to walk through?
This picture, it's this packet that Niels has.
Okay, Sarah and Alfred Harrison.
Yes. And
I have this original picture.
yes, we do. And you, I think you gave this to Nils. Yep. And that's in your packet. So if you want to do a nicer copy of that, you can. And maybe we can look at that bigger one. As we look on the top in the left, that's David, and we're going to learn a lot about David. This is where Monica and Benny and Ola and Birgit and Doris, this is their lineage.
Okay.
David, and he has an interesting story. Who is not in this picture is Edvar, and he died at 3 months. And we don't know much. We don't know. I don't know. Shirley, anybody can jump in. Does anybody know how he passed away? It was an infant. Okay. I think that's common. I think people that have done genealogy, they had big families, and sadly there was always somehow a death at a young age. So Edvar is not in there. So we see David, and the tall, handsome guy next to him is Newt, and he died at 24. And he died from complications of diabetes. So next to him is Sigrid, and that is your grandmother.
How do you spell that?
You know what?
Segrid.
On this
Right
little,
there.
Jim,
Right there.
it's all here, so you're gonna be okay. There's many, this picture is in a lot of, so it's kind of a classic picture, but you'll see. But that's Sigrid, and that's Cindy's grandmother. Next to him is Carl, and that is Nils' grandfather. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. And next is Edith. Isn't she beautiful?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, she's so
Next is
beautiful. Edith.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yep. And you know what, Jim, your dad, I don't know, it's funny the random things you remember. We were talking about old pictures, and none of them are smiling. And it's not that they weren't happy, but he said that photography was it just took so long.
Right.
I'm like, a smile just can't,
Yeah.
They just say, just sit.
The other thing I heard is that, nobody could get their teeth fixed back then,
Okay.
And so there were a number, just like there is today,
Yeah.
now can wear braces, but they just didn't want to smile. So they just said, okay, nobody smiles. That was sort of the protocol for photographers
And you'll see in all
back
these
then.
pictures, and it's not like they weren't unhappy.
Right.
Yeah. So then we'll go to the other side, and we have Ruth, and we don't know much about Ruth. Can anybody jump in
Do you
on
have any
that?
more?
Ruth?
I don't have another pen. I tried to find.
Ruth went back to Sweden, did
Yes.
she not?
Yeah.
Okay, and Ruth was married to Carl Larson?
Not the painter.
No.
No.
It's well covered in my mother's.
Your mother's book?
She has something about Ruth?
Yeah. she
Okay,
was
because
in
Nils
that.
did not.
Well, go ahead, keep going on.
Okay, and then next to her is Mormor. That would be Sarah, and that's how they say it, Sarah. And then up in the corner is Sting. That's your grandfather. And then next to Stain is Per Alfred. And then to the right is Joseph. And Nils didn't have much about Joseph, so I don't know if anybody has anything about him.
He moved to
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yes.
Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah. Married, was in the war. At least he was drafted at some point, but that's as far as I got.
He was a welder. I think has two
Yes.
children.
Yeah, 2 children.
Wow,
Wonderful.
interesting. And then the child in the front is Esther, and Shirley's going to get a little enlightenment on that. Nils explained that she had characteristics of dwarfism, like a midget. I did figure out Sarah was 42 when she had him. So Shirley has some insights into her.
I love standing next to Esther in church because I felt so grown up because I was as tall as her.
Yeah, she was 4'8".
Yeah.
What did Shirley, you were telling me you thought that she might have had Turner syndrome or?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, which is, it's not uncommon when born to a mother that's 42, plus father was not young either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Turner syndrome has, see her hands?
Mm-hmm.
And then also kind of a thick
Her neck, yeah, you'll see
Although,
that.
I have a thick neck too. But anyway, it's an extra chromosome.
Yeah.
So I think she has the characteristics of someone that had Turner syndrome.
You're just as sweet as could be though.
Yes,
she?
which doesn't affect mentality.
Right.
Right, but would affect
I mean, I never
physical
thought there was
characteristics.
anything wrong with her. She was just short and I love being next to her.
Where did she live?
Skeeter's mother.
She lived with Mormor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is.
And buried
Yeah.
with Mormor.
Was she ever married?
Never.
No.
No, it's different.
Then Mormon moved to.
She's on the backside
Oh,
of
is that right?
Oh, yeah.
your
She lived
grandmother
there for
in
like 10
CS.
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not.
There's a
know.
gravestone. Your grandmother and CS are on the front side of it, and Mormor and they're on the back side of it.
So Nils does take, this is, the next page in this little pamphlet, you'll see he talks about his family kind of going back. So you can look over that.
You did all of this.
He credits you guys, Shirley and Dan, you're mentioned in here for your trip here, and Cindy and Lynette. He gives credit where credit is due. And so then the next page he talks about, and this is just very brief of what Sarah's parents were. They were Anders and Stina Maha.
Wait, next page.
Okay, it says first.
Not in this packet.
Yes, that packet.
Okay.
Which packet? This packet?
Yes. Well, maybe,
No, it's not.
okay, try another one. Keep going, sorry about that, keep going, yep, the next one, yeah, sorry.
Which one? Searching for the Ghost?
Nope, not that side.
On my
Okay,
Swedish heritage?
Let's see. Here, this.
Yeah, okay.
This one.
Yeah. We know that Sarah, her parents were Anders and Stina Maha.
Oh, here.
Yeah, does that make sense? I don't know how to
Here
say
she
that.
is.
Okay.
They had 7 children. And she was 11 years old when her mother dies, and she has a brother that dies at 3 and another at 7
different
months.
This one.
Yeah.
Her father remarries, and at that point, Sarah then moves to Sorby,
Yet, first. Go all the
which
way.
is where,
Becky, let
Okay.
me catch up.
all right, sorry, yeah, I know,
We're trying to
yeah.
We're trying to
Okay.
find-
Okay, where it says first Sarah's parents, her parents, she has 7 siblings, and sadly, she too has, a brother dies at 3, another at 7 months. Her mother dies when she's 11, and her father remarries, and at that time, I don't know what the dynamics was, but then she's on, it kind of implies that she's on her own, and she moves to Sorby, and this is where she is a maid, and this is where she meets Per Alfred. And so that, you can look that over, and then on the next page, we have Per Alfred, and his parents are Per Olaf and Catherine.
And for the film, pair means what? Is it just
I
a
don't
name?
know. That's a good question.
I don't know.
You see it a lot.
They
You see it a
do
lot.
see it a lot in our family,
And-
so yeah.
And it was very important to say Per Alfred, because we said Alfred.
It's like I think, a title.
Yeah?
Oh, really?
I think so.
Like a
Not a name. Interesting.
Because it was like, kind of like that, only I think it's respectful.
Yeah.
Because there were lots of Per Alfreds and Per.
Right, right,
All of a
right.
sudden they became Per.
Yeah.
Yeah.
P-E-R in Swedish.
So his parents die, his dad dies first, and then his mother second, and so he is, what did I figure out how old he is? He's young, he's 16 when his mother dies, so he is alone, and he's on his own. His other siblings then go into foster care, and so Per Alfred then is working on the farms. And so we get a glimpse of 2 people that have had
Part of the name.
Tough life.
tough life, yeah, not easy. A lot of suffering and grief in their family. So you can look at that at your leisure, and then what we do know is that they met, and what we do know with Per Alfred, this is where Nils feels the Baptist faith comes through, is through his family, because Sarah is not Baptist, but when she marries Per Alfred, then she becomes Baptist.
Okay.
So that is where the Baptist comes. And here we did see this church that they were married in. It's Tortuna. And you can look at it still, the beautiful church. This is where our great-grandmother was married. So you can look at, pass that around.
Marilyn looked that up on Google, the Per, and it means, I guess in English, like Peter.
Oh,
No.
Huh? It does,
No,
what,
it's saying that it's their given name and it's masculine. So you're talking about the male,
Oh, it's like
Mister.
like Mr.
That's interesting.
That's his given name.
Yeah.
It actually comes from the Greek.
I love it.
Boy, those Vikings went
It comes from the Greek word for rock or stone. The name is a variant of Peter, a common masculine name of the
Oh, I
same
didn't see
origin.
it. Where'd you see Peter?
Well, you didn't read for him.
Oh,
First Peter.
it comes from rock or stone.
Yeah.
The
Nice
root is
to know.
Petrus.
So then we know that they had the son, Edvard, who
see
passed away at a young age. Then they had Knut and Edith, and they were baptized in this little church in Tilburga. And the baptismal font is still there. They're very cool. You'll see that up here where our Greg and mine and Jim, our grandmother, was baptized in this church. Now, the children after that were not baptized as infants, infant baptism. So it stops with Edith, or Carl, I'm sorry.
Because they wouldn't join the Lutheran church.
Right.
Right.
Newt and Edith, I'm sorry, Newt and Edith were the ones that were baptized, and then from then on in, if you look at the records, there's no mention of them being Baptists, or baptized.
Okay, they were baptized as infants, right?
Yes,
yeah.
infant
Okay.
baptism, yeah. And
So
I
when they-
find that curious how that dovetails with being Baptist. I don't know,
Oh,
because
they were Lutheran
Baptist.
at that point, right?
You think, yeah?
Yeah, they were Lutheran, and
Yeah.
then that's when the switch happens.
Yeah.
Now, were they rebaptized as Baptists?
I don't think so.
No.
You know, they used to call Anabaptists, which means
Yeah.
rebaptizers.
Yeah, we don't know that. I can't say that,
Okay.
Jim. So that could be. We don't know. That would be interesting to look at this Chandler Street
Yes, in
to
fact.
see if she was baptized Sarah. Or, I mean, not Edith. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I also found in the records when your father got baptized.
Okay.
And he was baptized with my Uncle Gunny and my Uncle Ike.
Okay.
Both of the two.
Do you know how old he was when he was baptized? I mean, is there any?
There's a date, so you can
Okay.
figure it out.
Okay. Because he had quite he was kind of a rebel, not a rebel, but a rabble rouser when he was a kid. And
Sure was.
he has a testimony of when he was somewhere in the neighborhood of 16, he was at a camp and had a tremendous conversion experience, which really changed his life. So and he kind of considers that, so, and some of these kids were baptized earlier as children.
No, they were, I think
He
this
was-
is adult.
He was an adult,
Or
okay.
Teenage,
Okay.
yeah.
I'd be
What year was
interested-
he born?
22, 1922.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, well, that fits. My dad was 21, your mother was 21.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's-
Youth group.
Yeah.
so what we see is, a common thread with our with Edith, with our great-grandfather and our great-grandmother is they were carpentry. That seems to be a common thread, and farming, and she was a maid. They traveled around a lot, so we won't get into that level of detail, but they end, and I love saying this word, Smeltjebakken. And that's where they landed, and it was here that we feel that Per Alfred, and not me, Niels, that he really gained, I don't know what the word is, money. He became very successful. He made coffins. He worked as a master craftsman in a mansion. They had a nice big home, and this is where they were in the church in Sorbet, and that is where we're going to have Jim. If you notice on the next page, you are mentioned. This is where the pastor Carl Sunmock comes to preach. And can you then talk about that incredible story? Because if that never happened, we would not be here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's on it.
Yes, it's on where the picture, yes, and in the middle of the page, it says Jimmy Carlson.
Right. You want me to go on from there?
Yes, well, you can tell the story.
Okay, well, I've got it written here, and this will kind of keep me from going off into tangents. I pass along a fascinating discovery in my research that you may or not already know. I found the May 13th, 1902 ship's manifest of the RMS Inverna with Edith Ericsson's name. The lines immediately below her name on the manifest read Carl Sunmark, wife Ida, daughters Ethel and Adelia. Now, Sunmark was the pastor of the church, okay? Carl Wilhelm Sunmark is the Swedish pastor who accompanied Edith to the United States when she was 17. The Sunmark name sounded familiar to me. He was a leading pastor in the Swedish Baptist Conference in the early years and the third pastor of the church I served in Ludington, Michigan. I was pastor number 28. Serving from 77 to 2011. In Sunmark's time, the Ludington Church was the Swedish Baptist Church. When we celebrated our 125th anniversary in 2003, our church historian wrote a book detailing the biographies of every pastor who'd ever served there. What he wrote about Carl Sunmark as it relates to Edith is amazing. Carl Sunmark was born in 1865 in Dalarna, Sweden, and he was converted to Christ in a Baptist church during his teenage years. He soon became an enthusiastic witness and felt called to the ministry. Though he had no education beyond common schooling, he studied the Bible and began preaching. He trained as a blacksmith to support himself. In 1886, he immigrated to the United States and began doing missionary work in northern Michigan among the Swedes. He was so effective, the Swedish Baptist Church in Ludington called him to be their pastor in October of 1888. That's where I was the pastor for 24 years. He was 23 years old and served for only 1 year, deciding he needed more theological training. In 1890, he enrolled for 3 years in the Swedish Baptist Seminary, which at that time was located in Stromsburg, Nebraska. While there, he honed his ministry skills, met Ida Johnson, and was married in Mead, Nebraska in 1993. During the next 7 years, he pastored churches in Chicago, Stromsburg, and Worcester, Massachusetts. He was known for his powerful preaching and successful fundraising. He helped every church retire their indebtedness. In 1900, the year 1900, he received a surprise invitation to return to his home in Smedjebacken, Dalarna, Sweden.
Love saying it.
Did I
I think so.
destroy that name?
No, but don't you love saying it? It's talking.
Okay. Sweden, to pastor the church where he was converted. He accepted the call and returned with his wife and young daughter Ethel. Adelia was born shortly after their arrival. He intended to stay in Sweden for only 2 years. And I saw that I have the application of the passport that he filled out to go to Sweden. And he said, I will be returning in 2 years. So that was the plan. I located a copy of his application for a U.S. passport to travel to Sweden. He had already become a naturalized U.S. citizen, he affirms. I intend to return to the United States within 2 years with the purpose of residing and performing the duties of citizenship herein. I don't know if he thought that maybe they'd eliminate his name from the citizenship if he stayed too long or what. But here is where Edith comes into the picture. Though she was born in the county of Västmanland, south of Dalarna, her family must have moved to Dalarna. Church records in Sweden seem to confirm this. In fact, her family moved somewhere near Smedjebacken because this is where she met Pastor Carl Sundmark. At the time, Edith is about 16 years old. Can we assume he hires her to become a house servant to help care for the children? This was typical of many of those pastors in those days. If they had children, they'd hire somebody to help them. On the ship's manifest in 1902, Edith declares her occupation as, quote, servant. Now the plan of God, you know, the older I get, sometimes I have a hard time continuing without tearing up.
It's a family trait.
It's a good one.
Transatlantic telegrams were used regularly in 1902. Carl Sundmark receives an invitation from the Swedish Baptist Church of Jamestown to become their pastor, and he accepts the call. He arrives with his family and Edith in the U.S. on May 13th, 1902, and begins at the church in Jamestown on June 4th, only 3 weeks after arriving in Boston. However, he only stays until April 1st, 1903. He receives a call from the Swedish Baptist Church in Rockford, Illinois, and decides to move there. Competition for good Swedish pastors was fierce. As Gladys noted on the video, Pastor Sundmark encouraged Edith to find other servant housework in Jamestown, which she did until she was married in 1911. I'm convinced that God sent Carl Sundmark back to Sweden in 1900 for one primary reason, to bring Edith to Jamestown so she might meet C.S. Carlson. Without this happening, none of us would be here. Their marriage produced fabulous children whose offspring for generations to come will impact the world. God works in a mysterious way, His wonders to perform.
Very nice, Jim. Thank you. And I was struck by that too, Jim. I thought that one man, we really never knew until I didn't, until doing this. He was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Here's a
think of
picture.
the complete circle here.
Uh-huh.
All
Can
of
I
a
see
sudden,
that?
Sure. This
You're
is a
in,
picture.
you're in the succession
Yeah.
of that guy, and you're here today.
Yeah.
One reason I think why he tears up is because he knows that Edith was the one that prayed his dad into committing his life and to Christ.
I've got a story
He's
about
got-
that. That's a very good story.
Because he was quite a rebel until that.
That's what I heard. But that's wonderful. I mean, that,
Yeah, and he would trip his dad. Well, I've heard the story because I was in his church about how Edith prayed for him.
Wow.
And
So was Edith the first?
She was the first to immigrate, yeah.
Is there Christ in the whole family?
No, Pierre Alfred.
Well, Edith was a very strong believer,
Okay.
and my father says that
She prayed
so was
Harold
yeah,
into the kingdom.
he would go out at night with his buddies, and they would do their thing or whatever they were doing, and he would have to sneak in, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and he would take off his shoes and he would sneak into the house and he would tiptoe down the hallway, but his room was past the room where Edith and Carl was, their bedroom. So he would tiptoe by. Every time he tiptoed by it, his mother would be by the bed kneeling, and she would pray loud enough in Swedish.
Love it.
Saying, Lord, bring Harold back to yourself.
Yeah.
oh, I love
And it only took so many times before it just broke his heart. But she did that every time he'd walk. She knew he was coming home, and she'd kneel by her bed, and she'd pray, Lord, bring Harold back to yourself. And that changed his life.
And yours.
And yours, yeah.
Precious.
What a beautiful
And mine.
story.
Yeah.
So we see that Edith comes to the United, and I love that story. And as you go on to the next page, we're not gonna, you can read that. She is the first to come of the family, and then after 6 years later, after Edith had immigrated, David comes. We're going to learn a little bit more about David, and then eventually more of the siblings come. And I just love, we all know and love Cornelia. And so she always has those little glimpses of stories. And if you look in the next to the last paragraph, she said, according to Cornelia, all of the ones that immigrated were Edith, obviously, Sigrid, your grandmother, David, and Joseph, and they shared a household for a while in Jamestown. Edith did the cooking, and the others worked in different places. You were talking about that, Cindy. Cornelia meant that the 4 of them had a good time and partied a lot. Money was easily gone.
Grandma said they laughed and laughed and laughed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that David becomes a tailor in a clothing factory, and that eventually, and then Joseph worked metal worker in the metal factory, and were boarders later with Carlotta Malmquist on Barrett Street Avenue. It's interesting because we're going to learn David then takes that back to Sweden. That trade in Ulricehamn is where a lot of textile and business is. You can read, we're not going to get into it, about the Little Smeljabacken Baptist Church. I think, Jim, you'll probably find that interesting. And Dan, we'll just, just for the matter of time, that's a lot of information there. You can certainly look over that.
This is their home.
The last thing on this that, as we move on, if you look on the page, there's a small print and then there's some big print and maybe a couple pages in. I like this story that what Cornelia says is Per Alfred seems to, in his belief, been very strict, while the mother, Sarah, was more soft. Cornelia also mentioned that Sarah was physically weak, which is very interesting because she lived to be, I think, 94, 97.
Something.
But physically weak. A thought might be that Sarah had constantly been pregnant and given birth to 10 children over 15 years.
I would do.
It wears
Yeah.
out.
According to Carl Alfred, this would have been Nils' grandfather. There was a good order and a sense of being honest and doing the right thing. I think we see that as one of those traits that we all, and Grandpa also told about when Sarah would make bread, it took a whole day. Per Alfred sent the junior boys in the furniture factory, from the furniture factory to Sarah to help. How much bread had to be made to feed a family of 11 every day.
Can I interrupt with one story that Niels told me about the discipline?
Yeah.
That literally Sarah would line the kids up on the furniture when Father came home, when
Wow.
Per Alfred came home, and he did the discipline, and he just went down the line, and she would tell him what they had done. He did this, she did that, and then he would discipline.
Wow.
Well, that trait went to my mother.
Did it really?
Oh, my mother observed the three of us, including her. And, she was making notes. Of course, the disciplinarian was Lyle.
Was Lyle? Oh, really? That's
And it was,
interesting.
Oh, no, I remember her getting after me.
So when we rolled in around 5:30, it was dinner time, and then there was disclosure time.
That must get passed out. My mother, and she must have gotten this from my dad. Whenever my brother, myself, and my brother and I were really getting into it, and then Julie, she never had any discipline.
Julie was an angel.
Yeah.
She'd say, just wait till your father gets home. And then he'd say, okay, let's go into the bedroom. You lay over the bed.
Oh, no.
He'd take off his belt, and he'd whack us right in the bottom.
Yeah, good.
And we learned after a while to put some books in the pants, and then we'd do a very good acting job. But when she said, "Wait, your dad's," that was the way it happened.
Yeah.
That was definitely a fair factor.
So as we said, Per Alfred, he started a carpenter shop. Business was good. He built quite a big house in Västerås, and they were doing well. And then he passes away from complications of two-sided pneumonia. So Sarah now is left with this big home and really no ability to make a lot of money, and so she has some of the kids are there, and so she is in a conundrum, I guess, as to what to do. And I don't know if you've seen, but there's and I have it in the packet. We're not going to read it today, but there's a letter that she writes home. And I think it's so, it kind of makes me sad. She just doesn't know what to do. What should I do? And right now she has put part of her family in the smaller part of the house, and then she's renting out the bigger house, but she's asking for advice onto what to do. And I love that she said that she would like to come and have Edith take care of her, because she wants to see the little pojung, and that means grandchildren, and at the time that would be your dad, Henry, and Phil. So she missed seeing her grandchildren, and so she wanted Edith to help with that. And so they make arrangements for them to come over. She comes with Esther. Is that how you say it, Esther?
Yeah, I think so.
And they stay with CS, and there were others that came with them. I have that somewhere, but yeah.
And Ruth.
And Ruth.
Yeah.
But it was funny, they said in there, CS, when he was very gracious, yes, you can come, but you need to work. Of course. Yeah. So they settled in Jamestown.
So in my house, which it's a museum of everything, and I'm still going through boxes, I found this cup, which is from Västerås.
Oh, no kidding.
And has all the pictures, I guess, of what are highlights of Västerås. And then this cup, which says, I think, installation 1908, Västerås. And I have to check with Nils what this means, because it was a metal manufacturing place. It was, and I don't know if my grandfather maybe went through some type of apprenticeship and you had to make a cup or what this means. But it's installation 1908. Maybe he made it into a metal union or something. I don't know.
You don't know.
But So,
It's documentation.
artifacts.
Oh, that's good. Wow.
This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing.
What we know, and again, there's more information here you can look at, but what we know at the time is that times were tough in Sweden. There was a famine. It was the weather was, I know, they had a lot of drought, and there was a lot of poverty, harsh weather, famine. There was political unrest, and obviously religious freedom is one of the things that brought them here. And Dan, we're going to give you a chance to talk about that, because we would love to know more about that. But as we continue, there's a thing that Nils has here on Sweden around the turn of the century, which is very interesting. I think you will enjoy reading that. And how his father became involved in the labor movement. Which was, I think, common. I think our CS was also involved in the labor movement.
Was he?
I think, yeah, because they what was interesting and about, and I'm sure Dan, you'll expand on it more, they did not like that the church was run by the government. And I love the words that Nils puts in there. They didn't like the government telling you the matters of your heart. And they also didn't like that the church and the government were like this, and those that were in the church and the government were more the elite, the academics, and so the people were not having a say, not only in the church, but in the government. So that was one of the things that they brought to the United States, which is what we're all about in terms of a democracy. This is run by the people, and that was something that they felt very passionately about, and I admire them.
And religious freedom and.
Yeah.
Again, for the camera, time to pause. Getting a lot of this from Nils Eklund, and
Yep.
his role in the family, where is he fit?
We will get to that, Greg. That's a good question. Monica has that.
His
so,
father was a brother.
Yeah. He's a second cousin.
Yeah, he's.
Okay, his father.
It was his
Give a name.
Carl was his father. He was
No,
brothers.
Carl was his father.
Brother to Edith.
of Edith, yeah.
And then they had a daughter.
Yes.
And Nils' daughter.
Yes.
Yeah. So he had one child. Carl had one daughter. She had an only child, which was Nils.
Got it.
So we're second cousins
Yeah,
with
all
him,
of us.
and then he has two daughters. So we'll just put
Isn't
that
that one daughter with
I thought it was
two-
one.
One daughter with two children.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got one
Nils.
daughter and he's got a
Yes.
son.
Nils has one daughter.
and a
Yeah.
son. He has two children.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No,
His son, too.
really?
Yeah.
I
Nils
think
has a
so.
son?
Yeah.
Ah,
I didn't
thought he
know
only
that.
had the daughter.
Yeah, I thought he
There's
only had the
a picture-
daughter.
I got a picture there, a photograph. Right, I
let's
think
see
here.
it.
No, that was the photograph
This
from
one here.
you.
No.
Oh.
No,
yeah.
no,
Oh.
it's the photograph from Shirley.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah,
These are my kids. This is his wife, Marguerite.
yeah.
My daughter Erica.
Okay, who has just the little thing? Oh, gosh.
now you
What little
mentioned,
It's a
you
little-
mentioned Cornelia. When David, is she still in Sweden?
Oh, here we
Because
go.
David went back to Sweden, and that was his
That was
daughter.
his-
So did Cornelia grow up in Sweden?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
So
She
that's
said-
that's
we'll
where
find that out.
you met
Yes.
in Sweden?
yeah.
Okay.
No, we met her here. She would come to visit.
Oh,
And
okay.
she took care of both CS and Edith at one point when they was, really for CS, but Edith was exhausted.
Oh,
So
When
they
she
know
came
him.
over, she met Carl on the boat and came to Jamestown, and she told her Aunt Sigrid, "I've met my husband and I want to get married." So Sigrid
That's
calls
Cornelia.
her sister in Sweden and tells her, "Your daughter's here, she wants to get married." So they take her shopping for a wedding dress. It was the bridal shop on Main Street there. And they asked her when she wanted it Friday, because they were getting married Saturday.
Yeah, two kids, yeah.
No, that's how it was.
Bart? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, where it says,
It's page 8.
yeah, Carl,
What do you
his,
guys, oh, okay.
had one child, Birgit, and then she
Birgit
had
had Nils.
Nils, and then there's, oh, you're right, and then it's two grandchildren, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes, so there's
right.
another, yes, it's only child, yes,
Right.
and then two
And
grandchildren.
Bart is Karen's husband.
Yes,
or
yes, yes.
And I
Significant.
wondered why
Yeah.
my grandmother had one child. And her sister had so many.
Yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
I know.
Nils, I
Big
want you to
families.
know, when you watch this, we figured you out.
I know, sorry.
Took a while, Nils, but we got you.
Sorry. This is just just so much information. So lastly, we're going to go to this little packet. This came from Monica, so it's got the same cover on it. It has a little BY on the top. She labeled everything. Okay. That's
It's in our packet?
it's in your packet. This is it right here.
What are you doing with mine?
And so this, she, again, has the same information, so we're not going to go over that again, but now she talks about David, which would be her grandfather. David, yes, and that would be our grandmother, Edith's brother. So David comes to the United States, he meets Elma, they get married in Jamestown at the Baptist Church, and they have 2 children. And if you turn the page, there's a beautiful picture of Elma and David on their wedding day. So pretty. And I think Greg has all of that in the other book. And here's a picture of Edith and Ruth. So we do have a picture of Ruth, but there's Edith. So what we know is that Elma and Dave had a daughter, Cornelia and Elsie, at that time. So that's where Cornelia comes into the picture. And Elma decides to take her 2 daughters and go back to Sweden. David does not go with her, and nobody seems to know why. It's just something they don't know. So she goes back to Sweden. World War I starts ramping up, and so they are looking for people to go in the service and get called up, and so that's when he decides to go back to Sweden. So he learns the tailoring. He's a tailor here in Jamestown, and so he goes back. And I don't know, Cindy, if you noticed that Riesingham is known for their textiles because they're a port city, and so he starts a textile manufacturing company and then a little store, which his daughter-in-law, Doris and Berger.
Right.
Yeah,
We went to their store.
I bet it was lovely.
It was very comparable to like Carnahan's was here,
Yeah.
another high quality, good food or clothing. And the guys all came home with ties.
Yes.
Still have the tie.
Oh, yeah.
And so I love this little picture here on the next page. He's reunited with his wife. She did not want to come back to the United States, and we don't know why. So they settled in Riesingham. And you can look at this picture, and again, you'll notice, like to Shirley's point, on the far left you see Esther, and you see, again, kind of, very, the short neck, and you can see, the...
Now, which page is that?
Keep going. Yeah. And this was taken, Per Alfred had passed away after that, so that was a nice picture that they were able to get. And Stein's in there, Shirley.
Yes.
You see that? And obviously Nils' father, Carl, and his wife, Anna, is in that picture too. Okay, so we'll go on to the next page, and here we have our grandmother and grandfather, Carl and Edith, and that's with Henry and Phil. Cute kids. And here is where Carl and Anna, and this is where Nils comes in. This is Carl, that's brother with Edith, his wife Anna, and then their daughter, I guess you say Birgit, is that right?
Birgit, yeah.
Yeah, and that is Nils' mother.
Very good.
And then down below, there's Walter. There's Walt, and his mother Sigrid, and Eric. So that, I like that picture.
Yeah,
Looks like your dad.
Now, when, what was that, CS was working down in Pennsylvania in the logging at first too.
Yeah.
And he befriended my grandfather, and he's the one that brought him home to Jamestown.
No kidding.
And introduced him to Sigrid.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So that's how that happened.
Part of the Austin, Pennsylvania story.
Yes.
So he was in Erickson too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, not an Erickson of our Erickson, but
No, but a
Erickson married
different-
Erickson.
Yes. Grandma was Erickson. Spelled differently though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was spelled with 2 C's or something. I don't know. It was spelled different.
Okay, so we go to the next picture, and this Monica had done for us, there's our mother, didn't know that she rode horses, but an adorable little picture of her in a doll in her costume, which we have, which is very fun. Our grandkids have worn that. Yeah.
How neat.
And Ruth has pictures of her and Adele in the
Yeah,
same costume, yeah.
Yeah.
My grandmother brought me home a doll when she went in 1950, and it has the costume on it. I have a couple of different outfits to it too.
That's cute.
Nice.
And my daughter took it to school though, and one of the boys in her class smashed it. I can't include it together, but.
So the next picture is a family photo that was taken during David's visit in the United States in 1936. So what is interesting, you'll see Walt is as you look on the end, on the back, Edith, Carl Sigrid's there, and you know, he has Larry as the last. If you go on the top row, I think that's Harold.
No, I think that's my dad.
Yeah, but if you look, okay, look sitting, look at the little, the Erickson boys, they look like they, yes.
Well, Stein is the last four here.
Yeah,
This is Stein. Standing behind Stein is my grandma Lily.
right.
Behind.
Next to Lily is my dad Larry.
Yep.
And then Gunnard is sitting.
Right. But see, he has Larry as, do you think that's your dad there?
Right
He
here.
mentions Larry twice.
Yeah, he mentions Larry
This
twice.
is Larry.
That's Larry, and who's the one seated?
Gunnard.
Now- Well, okay.
Well,
No, he has Gunnard.
he has Gunnard on the left,
Sister Gladys.
as the second person on the left.
Let me just go, sitting from left, I would say that, the far left, that's Harold.
Yes,
And that's mislabeled.
right.
Yeah.
Mislabeled.
He's calling him
And
Gunnard.
then Gunnar, and then,
Esther, yeah, Gladys.
So it's not Enard, it's Harold.
it's Harold. I would say that's Harold. Yeah,
Okay.
and this picture here, that's
Okay.
Harold,
Yeah, that's Harold.
that's Harold.
Okay.
She looks like him,
Right
yeah.
here, this is Harold. Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Change
That's my
that.
father, yeah.
Which one?
Yeah, Harold, Gunnard, Esther, Gladys.
Yeah, I have that. I thought that was, okay.
But what about the two Larrys? We still haven't straightened that out.
Good night.
Well,
We've got Larry on the top, and
That's
then
Einard.
sit-
It's
Einard.
Einard. Einard was known for his ears.
Okay,
He did have them too. So underneath my dad, Larry is Einard.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep,
well,
all
that's,
that-
yeah, we do have that.
So it's not Einard on the left.
Okay, who is that
That
on the far
was-
left?
that's Harold.
That's Harold.
Harold and then Gunnard. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay,
Yes.
but where is your dad?
My dad is standing up next to my grandmother at the end of the back
By
row.
Lily in there.
Okay, and that's,
And then where he has Larry, that would be Ernie, right? Or Einard.
Einard.
Einard,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Point to,
How do you spell Einard?
point to your father.
He has it there, EINARD.
On the end there. Okay.
Where is it?
And sitting down here is Einard.
Oh, I see.
This is Einard with the ears.
Okay,
Right.
AKA Ike.
that's Einard.
Ike, okay, that makes sense to
He
me.
knew him as
Yeah,
Ike.
thank
I wouldn't-
you.
Yeah,
He knew him as
yeah,
Ike.
yeah, I knew him as Ike, that helps a lot.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Yeah,
Okay.
that fills that out.
All right, thanks,
After
Shirley.
church, you go up and you'd shake Uncle Stein's hand, and he always had a piece of candy.
Well,
I know.
I was
Hard
going
to
to mention that because you talked about how he met
Pokagrisa.
Yeah.
Candy, that, yeah. And you know, Stein was an imposing figure.
Yeah.
And he didn't, you know, typical, almost like, I hate to say Lutherans, when you look at standard Lutheran, they don't smile, they sort of glower. Doesn't mean they're mad, they just don't smile. And so you'd see him at church, and he really was intimidating. I mean, he was just a big guy.
Yes.
You know, you're the candy man. So you gravitated for the candy.
I do have one side story about him too. He had a neighbor that had an old cat that he didn't want to put down. So he asked Ike if he would take care of it. Sure, he grabbed it by the tail and hit it against the side of the building and took care of it.
That was my grandpa.
Yeah,
Yeah, my grandpa
Yeah.
just took the cat and
Yeah,
put it on
yeah,
Your
the side of the
grandpa.
house.
yeah.
no, grandfather.
My grandfather.
Stein.
Stein.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you're talking about discipline, he was a disciplinarian. I was afraid of
He
him.
had to with all the boys.
Right, and I heard that they were holy terrors.
And
Same kind of discipline that they've already we talked about.
Right.
The boys come in and you get
Yes.
down the line with them.
Yes.
And Ernie was the youngest one, and I heard a story where they told him something about the chicken was gonna lay an egg and left him in the chicken coop so they could go get rid of him. They were doing all kinds of things like that. I guess the youngest sibling they were trying to get rid of.
Ernie was a professional.
Yeah.
He was,
Always goofing around.
Okay, we'll just finish up here real quickly and then we can take a break, a little stretch. The next picture is when Sigrid and Eric visit Sweden. You can look at that. There's some cute pictures. So from David, we get, he had 4 children. Let's make sure I get this right. Oh, it's also,
Yeah, it's hard to remember.
yes. Okay, so he has 4 children. We know Cornelia and Elsie. Those are the ones that were born in the United States that came back to Sweden. And then he has Doris, who marries Berger, which you have seen his beautiful store. And from Doris, we have Benny, which many of us have met Benny and Ulla, Cindy especially. Christina, she's been here too. So they had 3 children, and that's where Monica comes into play.
Where? Show me.
Yes. So she is Doris, that is David's daughter.
What page are we on? I need to write a note.
Yes, I don't know if there's a page.
No.
That was,
Look at the picture here, and it has a picture of Doris holding.
Yeah, right here, Doris.
Monica.
yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And so she has 3 children, Benny, which we've met, Christina, and Monica. So we see Doris. She has Benny. Have you met Benny and Ulla? Ulla has passed away.
No.
Okay, and then that's all their grandchildren. And then, I'm sorry, Christina.
This is Monica?
Yeah,
And then
This is,
this is Monica.
Berger, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
is Benny standing
I've been
up
trying
there?
to figure
I
that out.
know. Inquiry minds want to know.
I was reading the,
You know what's interesting about this picture, from the previous ones in the 1920s and 30s, the people smiling.
Yes, I noticed that, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But it was a lot, the camera took too long, they had to.
They had to keep that.
Eastman Kodak.
So you told the beautiful story of Cornelia and Carl. Boy, did she love Carl.
Oh, yes. And every time they came back from Sweden, we had to go see the tree they planted, or that he proposed to her at
Under.
Niagara
Oh.
Falls. And
really?
one year, there were 3 times different Swede families came over one summer, and we had to go to Niagara Falls naturally and see the tree. And my mom said the last time, yep, the water's still going over. Every other week, we're going over to Niagara Falls.
That's cute. That's cute. They decided to go back to Sweden, the 2 of them. I feel like they knew that that's where they wanted to be around family.
Yeah, at that time. in their life.
It was conflicting to her. I remember my dad was saying that she loved America, but she wanted to be with family, and we get that.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
think
gonna,
Carl was wanted to be there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so we got to see.
And when they got married too, well, the first time they came, we had a cat. And he had a black suit. When he got up, his whole backside was cat. So he was very particular about things. But then we ended up, as kids put rice in their suitcase when they got married. Because it didn't really go over like we do here.
They didn't have a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, yeah. Cornelia laughed, but Carl didn't care for it. So,
Just a couple of quick things, and then I want to end with something that Niels shared that I think it just speaks volumes about us. There's some information here about Arvid. It's in the packet, and that would be, I think Lynette would probably find that very interesting.
Very.
And Jim, you
Oh,
will
yes,
find
I
it.
know that.
But there's some personal
where's
information, too,
that?
and that's in the back on the right side, I think, here. If you'll have time to look through all that. And then this book called Our Scandinavian Heritage was written and compiled and sold by the Northern Men's Club.
Very
Is that right?
nice.
Yeah. There's 3 stories in here. Do you have this, Shirley?
I don't, but I guess
don't
it's
have it.
available on Amazon.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll have to get it.
You can get it at our American Swedish Institute in Minneapolis.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, I have it too.
Well, I made copies, and I'm going to apologize. They're not the best copies. So but I made copies of you for 3 stories that you'll find interesting. Our mother wrote a story, Tanya wrote a story about the meat market, and then there is a really interesting story about Arvid, and it's about finding the ghost of my father. And that, you'll find that very interesting, Dan.
Yeah.
About his,
Lord.
yeah.
Yeah.
You have that.
It's in your packet.
It's in the packet,
So, if you get it, you'll get a chance to look at that. We don't need to go into it today, but I think you'll find that really interesting.
It is very.
His story. So, Nils kind of wraps up all of this information that he gives, and I love what he says. He says, I find it interesting that Sarah and Per Alfred managed to raise a cohesive family. I believe they also managed to bring up a sense of enthusiasm, justice, and do right. Something I think still is a trademark for Eriksons. Some close examples that I can relate to that he observed from their family, that when my brother Newt went ill in the impact of diabetes, Sarah demanded that my grandfather should help him in his work. When Sarah's late sister husband's new wife died, Sarah demanded that Esther should go and help the widower, Morborough, and Uncle Johansson in the household. Another example is that when the sister Ruth came back to Sweden in July of 1940, my grandfather felt the duty as a brother to assist her when she was ill. And I believe there are many similar examples when it comes to the sisters and brothers that went to America, not least what Edith and Carl and also Sigrid did for their siblings, and finally their mother when they came to Jamestown. And I believe that's who we are. I mean, we're family. This is us. You know, we take care of each other. And that was just, I mean, that was, you know, you take care of family.
That's right.
And I think, I don't know who that came from, Sarah or Per Alfred, but I'm guessing both. And I think, you know, that's what, you know, Christ commands us to do, is to take care of our family, take care of the widows, take care of those that, you know, are not, you know, don't have. So they certainly, I believe that is our legacy, one of the many things that is our legacy.
Wonderful.
So you can look through this, and I know that there's much more information that you guys are going to share. Why don't we take a break?
Before we do that, let me
Okay.
tie everything together.
Okay?
Because there was a missing link,
All right?
as you recall, regarding Ruth.
Okay, yes, there
We
is.
don't have much about Ruth,
No,
says
we
Becky.
don't.
Lo contraire.
Okay, yeah.
Where is that?
That's like, let's see, it's like
Okay.
Bible drill, you know?
That's right,
You know.
that's right. Is it Psalms? Is it in the middle?
Yeah, it's- About a third of the way through, and I'll just read it for the purposes of Nils. Larson Eriksson. Ruth Eriksson, daughter of Mrs. Sarah Eriksson, married to John Larson. An attractively appointed Thanksgiving wedding took place Thursday afternoon when Miss Ruth Eriksson, daughter of Mrs. Sarah Eriksson and John Larson, were married at the home of Mr. and Mrs. C.S. Carlson, 48 Chapman Street. Mr. and Mrs. Carlson are brother-in-law and sister of the bride. Arvid Edstrom, retired pastor of the Swedish Baptist Church, performed the ceremony. Attendants were Miss Esther Eriksson, sister of the bride, and Walter Eriksson, a nephew. The bride wore da-da-da-da. The wedding march was played by Gladys
I was just going to say that.
Carlson, 8-year-old niece of the bride. The service was read beneath an arch of oak leaves and yellow
really was.
straw feathers. The wedding supper was served by 35 guests by Mr. and Mrs. Carlson. Waitresses were Miss Ina Forsner, Miss Lorraine Bolin, Miss Gunnel Berquist, and Mrs. Gideon Berquist.
I know.
And out-of-town guests were Mr. and Mrs. William Sundberg, Mr. Magnuson, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, of course, and the dolls. So if this all ties in, we got all of this action going on here. Berlin, C.S. Carlson, Ruth, my mother playing, all that happening right there on 48 Chapman. So, and there are pictures.
Oh, I can't
of
wait to see
all of
that.
this stuff here.
Yeah.
So Mom was very proud of being an 8-year-old phenom playing.
Yeah.
Well, in that would
8
be-
years old.
Yeah. I mean, usually they're excited to be the flower girl step. She's playing the piano.
So that's the quick story, Nils,
That's a real resource to
You know more
know.
about Ruth.
we now know what. Pardon?
There's more about Ruth.
Is there?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's in there, but when they went back to Sweden,
Put the camera on her,
Carl,
please.
not Carl, what her husband's name? They just got married?
John.
John Larson had her committed to whatever is considered a mental institution over there.
Really?
And Nils' father actually was the one that would go to see her and take care of her and do right. So I can remember my parents talking about how it wasn't necessarily, all the family wondered why she was being committed to this mental institution over there. And then John comes back and married Verna. Remember Verna? Verna Larson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, Verna became his wife.
Okay.
And were they ever divorced is the question.
That is the question.
Or did she die while she was there?
Maybe she died before they got married. But anyway, so she did die in the mental institution.
Yeah, it's true.
But Nils' father did care for her
Yeah.
That's fine.
and go to visit her. And I don't know, maybe take her home for holidays.
Mhm.